Jesus Strikes Back. And it is being released, and we want to first thank Joe N. This is an example of how viewers participate in our show and bring very unusual and interesting topics to our attention, and then we turn around and talk about them. We're going to show you a short video. Before we do it, let me tell you, we had to edit very, very carefully. In the game, you can be Adolf Hitler, you can be Jesus, of course you can be Donald Trump. And we're going to show you portions of the game, just a short snippet of understanding what it is, and then we'll talk about it in a moment. Watch this.
We're gonna win. We're gonna keep winning. We're gonna win at military. We're gonna win at trade. We're gonna win at everything we do. We're gonna win, win, win. You people, you're gonna be sick and tired of winning. You're gonna say, Mr. President, please, we can't take it anymore. You're winning too much. And I'm gonna say, I don't give a damn. We're gonna keep winning 100%. America first. We're gonna make America great again. We're gonna make America.
Well, as you can see in this incident of the game, you're Donald Trump. I'm quite sure Donald Trump had no voice in the participation in this. So come on, let's give the president some credence. You can choose to be Jesus. You can choose to be Hitler, etc. You go through different levels.
We're giving him credence because he didn't kill 6 million Jews.
Exactly. In the game, you go to different levels where you kill Jewish people, you kill gay people. The bathhouse in this is basically RuPaul, run by RuPaul, and all kinds of other different kinds of things. It is disturbing, to say the least, and it will be wildly successful.
Already is.
What do y'all think? It just released this week.
You know, when we talked about the first video game and when we're talking about this one again,
Angry Boy.
Yeah, when we talked about that, my initial reaction is, this is stupid, why give it a platform? However, my secondary reaction, first of all, it was extremely triggering, the video itself, to me. And I can say that as someone with PTSD, I was triggered. I use that word carefully. But it was also starkly eye-opening. This week, the news was released that a U.S. Coast Guard member, a lieutenant actually of the U.S. Coast Guard, was arrested and is a domestic terrorist. And I found it interesting that in the game, apparently you have to get to certain levels, 3 levels, before you can kill any gays. That's your prize. This domestic terrorist also had levels in his hit list as far as different types of Democrats, liberals, whatever, gays, whatever the category you want to put them in. He's had very similar categories as to levels of his targets. And it just... Video games, yes, they're an outlet. Yeah, they're not real. Lots of people play video games and don't become violent. However, they do represent and symbolize something that is extremely alarming and extremely upsetting that is happening in this country and has been ruminating for a long time.
Other thoughts? The new game, Jesus Strikes Back.
I think it's horrendous, especially with what we've been going through the last couple of years with all these mass shootings, and then I know a lot of people like he says, like, oh, it's just a video game, but still, it's like, why put it out there? Why provoke? Why put more violence over here? Because it might not be triggering for you or your family, but some kid that he has some issues and dramas, he might take it like, oh, so I can do this, and I just think it's horrendous. I don't think we have to put more platform, this kind of games and this kind of violence in our society when we are having some serious mental issues, which I keep saying all the time.
It's interesting to me. Last week we talked about the Parkland 1-year anniversary. I spoke very freely about the effect that Pulse had on me and Eddie Sotomayor being shot at Pulse. I have brought this up in our production room because we have many gamers in our production center, and it's happening out. And I always point out first, I don't really understand the value of the shooting video games because all you're doing is just pulling a trigger, basically. I don't see the skill in it. I'm explained how I'm ignorant on this subject. That is not true. Okay. And then the second observation I always made, and let's pull out to 10,000 feet on this conversation, isn't the sheer fact that we are committed to gaming. Gaming is way more popular than any other entertainment in the world. More than films, more than television. It is the most popular entertainment choice in the world. Games that just kill people, that shoot, and you go through battlefields of shooting people, aren't they equally bad? Maybe they're not racist or homophobic, but they're the same thing?
Yes, they are the same thing.
They're the same thing.
Every one of them has targets.
Now, if my observation that I just made gets widely reported in social media, I will have thousands of people just criticize the crap out of me.
I think there's a huge distinction between the shooting games that are shooting at targets that are aliens, as opposed to the shooting games that are targeting animals, human beings, specifically in this game, different.
Poor aliens.
Different
plays.
pieces
Let's shoot
of, but the fictional versus the fictional versus the non-fictional. And I have a little nephew in my life, right? And when he was growing up, they would not let him shoot. Use or participate with shooting games that shot anything that was realistic. You understand?
Yeah.
And there's something that happens in our brains that if we're thinking we can shoot, we can just point. And what is I have a sniper game on my phone, and my goal is to take out assassins. Okay, great. If I'm what am I, a special agent? All right. I'm looking through this little scope and I'm shooting somebody in the head. You get what I mean? So there's a huge distinction between fictional and non-fictional. I don't know if I have necessarily a problem shooting targets off beer cans off a ledge and doing that sort of thing. But when we're creating video games like this and also naming them Jesus Strikes Back, this is a real dangerous
That's where
road.
the success of the zombie franchise comes from, because it feeds into this urge for people to want to shoot at human forms, but the zombie thing lets you off the hook because they're already dead and because it's non-realistic.
But the choosing of the characters that they had here, there's a character which actually I read an article, they say, it's not Hitler, it's just an Austrian with the mustache that looked like Hitler. It's just it shows the hate that they have because it just shows the specific characters to be in this game.
The one other thing that I want to ask y'all about is, do you think that in the age that we're living in, this kind of entertainment, embracement of focusing on gays or focusing on religious people or Republicans or Democrats, socialists are in this or whatever, that it is in the age that we're living in, we are getting more radical, and we're justifying that radical action to say, okay, well, it's okay because it's these people. And ultimately, we're moving to a society that's going to become worse and worse.
I don't know that I would agree with that, and that's only because two things. One is my children. They played those war games only after they were a certain of age because I wasn't going to allow that otherwise. I talked to them.
Because that's parenting, and parenting is not going on in America.
Well, okay, yes, but on that front, they have the right to create them. I have the right not to buy it and not to view it, and I have the right to have my children not view it. I don't think that we can actually institute something banning that. And I think part of it is but part of it's a progression, because I remember growing up, and yes, I shot guns and killed squirrels and rabbits from the time I was 6 and 7. But we also played Army on the mountain because I'm out in the country, and Army, you're pretending, right? You've got opposition. I think Army and competing, right, is part of what oftentimes little boys and girls, my sister played with us, as part of growing up. I think these games have taken what was more harmless games and made it more bloody.
There's
on
decade
screens.
theory. There's lots of sociologists that have focused on a theory that is discussed a lot in universities. It's called the decade theory. And the decade theory is you pick today, and whatever the topic is, like this game, and you moved back 10 years, what would people 10 years ago thought about this moment on this subject? And then you move 10 years back again, now you're at 20, what would they think? And then 10 years more, 30 years, what would they think? In almost every instance, in decade theory, the reaction is that what we would have accepted 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, we are way off. We are way worse, no matter what the subject is. That we are degrading and degrading and degrading, and we use free speech or economic enterprise or whatever.
The fall of Greece, the fall of Rome,
exactly.
The fall of every great empire has been the degradation of their values.
Well, this
on
game
individuals
sitting in
human
front of
life.
us, Jesus Strikes Back, isn't it a reflection of a society that is really beginning to fall apart?
And it's worth repeating that Jesus was a Jew, and his primary message was to love thy neighbor as thyself.
Yeah. Well, we're going to watch this game. We'll see how popular it is. Like Angry Goy, we'll come back to it, but it is definitely very controversial. Let's move to some... Oh, all right. Erin's coming in and cashing in her chip. Finally, I'm going to get a drink today.
Yeah, I did not think this was the segment I was going to use my chip on, but here we are.
Okay.
Joe, you mentioned that you used to play games, army games, when you were a kid, and that was more of an innocent kind of shooting game versus now with this specific target, which on one level, I get what you're saying. But what gave me pause is the question that immediately comes to my mind. What made the opposition in those army games innocent or harmless versus the opposition here? And that's a rhetorical question, but I ask it because this is something that our country, the people in our country, when it comes to following politics and following, kind of knowing what's happening, knowing about the Cold War, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, we don't see the opposition in those circumstances as being specific people. We see that opposition as being some kind of vague, some kind of anonymous, some kind of, faceless target, whereas people are not beer cans, no matter whether it's a war game or this game.
Anybody else want to throw a chip in, or we move?
I was told that you can make one comment after a chip was given, so I'm not giving you my chip. Okay. Anyway, my chip takes away a drink from you. So. So you don't want my chip. Just to piggyback, now I forgot what I was going to say. No. Because it also about what you said about the alien thing. I mean, I think it's really a spiritual crisis, because we do have to think about all forms of othering when we other people, when we dehumanize, when we create this kind of us versus them. Anytime there's an us versus them, and not seeing the connectivity, the connectedness that really we are all, not just humans, but the planet, the animals. Anytime we disconnect from the oneness and the connectivity.
Called othering.
As far as that's my definition for today, yes.
Okay.